wheels up for the PM as MPs get ready to call it quits for the summer. This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
Going beyond the headlines.
Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
Prime Minister Mark Carney's plane is scheduled to touch down in Ottawa at around 7 o'clock Eastern Time this evening, putting the wraps on his second G7 summit as Canada's Prime Minister. As is commonplace, Mr. Carney took time for the media contingent following him on his latest overseas trip, a trip dominated by the Trump administration's pending deal with Iran. The Prime Minister called that a game changer that could lead to other breakthroughs in Ukraine and in Lebanon.
The change in tone with respect to Ukraine, the change in orientation, a more realistic, in our view, expectation of where this war was going to go, and the position against Russia, the tightening of sanctions against Russia, the ability to provide additional defensive support for Ukraine, which was discussed in some detail. Also very detailed discussion about Lebanon and next steps with that. The linkage, of course, here. Yes, there are risks. Yes, the accord has to be put into place. But the very fact of it and the fact that so many countries were involved in its development and are vested in its development does create knock-on effects, positive knock-on effects.
The Prime Minister also took some time to speak with CNN's Caitlin Collins, telling Collins he thinks the U.S. action in Iran was worth it.
Do you believe this war was worth it in Canada's view?
I think that, the number one risk, I answered this question 3 years ago or so at Davos, and I was asked, what's the number one risk in the global economy? And I said Iran. And it was at a time when people were not focused on Iran, because I've always believed that it's the biggest exporter of terror. It was hell-bent, sorry if I can say that, on getting a nuclear weapon, and the force multiplier on that, of course, was terrible. And so going and getting to a position where Iran is not going to have a nuclear weapon, look, I'm not naive about this. The reintegration of Iran, this is a regime that needs to learn to be civilized, needs to behave. That's why you have performance measures. Lots needs to happen. We all have to support it. But moving to this position where that's been taken off the table, yes, that's worth it.
Mr. Carney also found himself having to explain a so-called hot mic moment. He was captured on camera speaking to Donald Trump about Carney's plan to allow Chinese-made EVs into Canada. The Prime Minister is heard telling Trump, quote, "It's less than 3% of the Canadian car market," and, quote, "I thought you'd actually like that." To which Trump responded, "That's good. I like that." When asked by reporters about the exchange, Prime Minister Carney suggested it was just one of many things he and the U.S. president talked about.
I spoke to him about a range of things. He had asked, he had asked me about it on China, and I explained to him what the deal. I mean, it was one of many interactions with him, and I was explaining the actual structure of the deal. You're familiar with it. I'm not surprised that the President of the United States doesn't follow every detail of every agreement that Canada has, and he likes the structure. Actually, we had a follow-up conversation about it as well.
Well, not a surprise, Mr. Carney is coming home without any kind of breakthrough on trade talks with the United States. The top cabinet minister in the thick of those talks is Dominic LeBlanc, who told reporters the Canadian side did speak with the U.S. Trade Representative, Jamieson Greer.
We don't negotiate the details of these issues publicly. I have said that we continue to make progress, and the conversation today with Jamieson was an opportunity to build on exactly that positive work that was done 2 weeks ago.
Mr. Carney is arriving back in Ottawa as the clock counts down to the summer break for MPs. His government is trying to rush through some pieces of legislation before the end of the session, while tabling new legislation that the House will have to tackle in the fall. One of those bills deals with clean drinking water on reserves. That was tabled just yesterday. Conservative MP and Cree First Nations leader Billy Morin called the bill jargon and performative.
I see absolutely zero when it comes to a timeline from the government in this bill. There is no mention of dates other than a 5-year review for the commissioner and the aspects of the bill itself. For the commission itself, I question whether the government, they always say they're for UNDRIP, free, prior, and informed consent, they're for these things, but I don't think they actually believe what they're saying. It's jargon and it's performative at the end of the day, because if they were for those things, they would put more jurisdiction within the hands of First Nations rather than this commission. It's advisory and 600 plus First Nations across the country. If they truly believe in nation-to-nation partnerships, that's where the jurisdiction should lie, as opposed to concentrating in a fake commission or in the minister itself, which the bill actually does spell out.
The Liberals did pass a key piece of their tough on crime agenda, with Bill C-14 getting royal assent. That's the next phase on bail reform. This was the Justice Minister, Sean Fraser, on that.
Keep in mind, the goal with these strengthened reforms in the short term certainly is to address very real challenges when it comes to public safety, the rate of crime that we've seen that we hope to take down, and are seeing some positive trends in that direction, by the way. But the long-term vision is not to incarcerate more people. It's to prevent crime from happening that demands incarceration in the first place.
The House of Commons is supposed to break on Friday. It would not be unusual if that happened tomorrow at some point. And then it is the summer barbecue circuit, and we will soon see politicians in cowboy hats flipping pancakes at places like the Calgary Stampede. Barring something extraordinary, the House of Commons would not return to action until September 21st. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. This is News Radio.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
10 years ago today, MAiD, medical assistance in dying, became legal in Canada. And later today, we will find out whether a special committee of parliamentarians that's been studying MAiD thinks the government should expand eligibility for MAiD to Canadians whose only medical condition is mental illness. We are joined today by Dr. Ramona Coelho. Dr. Coelho is a family physician, an adjunct researcher at Western University, research professor at Western University, co-editor of Unravelling MAiD in Canada, and a former member of Ontario's MAiD Death Review Committee. Doctor, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Well, as this is the 10th anniversary of MAiD's legalization in Canada, what do you think of the legislation as it stands right now?
Well, I do think the legislation's focus has been on autonomy and choice, and I think that most Canadians highly support those values. I would say that there needs to be more focus on balancing that choice with protection of vulnerable Canadians. There was a study that was done by Choi et al. That was published in BMJ Open that showed while most Canadians in that survey supported medical assistance in dying, most also did not support many of the legal options for MAiD that are happening in Canada at this point. So when they understood what kind of cases were legal, support fell. And so I think there's really been a lack of emphasis on protection of vulnerable persons in this conversation in the past 10 years.
So, for example, there have been calls from some to do away with what are called Track 2 cases of MAiD. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I strongly agree. You know, when we see the Health Canada reports, and this is for all MAiD, we can see that there are people who are choosing MAiD for their suffering is being driven by loneliness, isolation. In Track 2 MAiD specifically, when I was on the MAiD Death Review Committee, the coroner released a report of statistics from Ontario, and it showed that people in Track 2, so people who are not near their end of life but accessing MAiD, often have been offered drugs, but not mental health supports, disability supports, not community solutions, and that they had much higher levels of social isolation. Those are all very disturbing reasons. I think that most Canadians would not approve of people accessing MAiD for. We have solutions for those. The UN Committee of Rights of Persons with Disabilities in 2025 released a statement that Canada is failing our disability community by not offering solutions to live and yet offering them MAiD, and they called for the repeal of Track 2 MAiD. Similarly, the International Association of Suicide Prevention in December of last year released a statement saying that we need to remember that disabled persons deserve suicide prevention as does every Canadian. And so I absolutely agree with that recommendation to go further and repeal all of Track 2.
So in your opinion, then, you believe that the government should be providing more rigorous social supports, whether it's better access to affordable housing or mental health services, or perhaps even palliative care. So some Canadians aren't seeking out MAiD out of desperation or poverty. Is that what you're saying, Doctor?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, in the MAiD Death Review Committee, we have some cases. And for example, there was a lady who wanted to die with palliative care. She could not access palliative care. Her husband, who was burnt out, asked the MAiD team to come. The same day that she was denied hospice care and admission, she received medical assistance in dying because she had no other options. I don't think that's what Canadians want MAiD for. And similarly, some of the other cases where we see MAiD for, a lack of finances or housing options, or people who feel like they have no other options. I mean, then basically that this is a furthering of social and societal neglect. When we're not offering people what they need to live, we live in a socialized care system. We are responsible as a society for funding these people's lives to live well. And if we don't do that, make them desperate and offer them MAiD, I consider that to be a huge human rights violation.
Okay. If you will hang on for a few more minutes, I want to get into some other aspects with you, because there's quite likely going to be a major announcement today on expanding MAiD eligibility to Canadians who are suffering only from a mental illness. This is something that was supposed to be the law in Canada already. It's been delayed multiple times, and according to news reports, this committee is going to recommend that the government reject that expansion. I want to ask you about that when we come back. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know, and this is News Radio.
There is no question Rob won't get answered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues
on News Radio.
Dr. Ramona Coelho is with us, family physician, adjunct researcher at Western University, research professor, co-editor of Unravelling MAiD in Canada, and a former member of Ontario's MAiD Death Review Committee. This is the 10th anniversary of MAiD becoming legal in Canada. And Doctor, over the years, there have been news stories about people being rejected for MAiD in one province, only to travel to another province and be approved for MAiD. What's your opinion on that? Should that be looked at?
Very much so. I've written about this. I think that you're referring specifically to the story of Keanu. Keanu is in Ontario, and he had diabetes, and some consequences of his diabetes were vision changes and pain. And he was not able to find a MAiD assessor here who thought he met the criteria. And so he had a virtual assessment with someone in BC and flew there and had his life ended very young in his 20s. I think that there's a huge problem with standardization of MAiD. So a lot of the terms, the legal terms, do not translate easily into medical lingo, let's say, like reasonably foreseeable natural death. You have MAiD providers themselves released a study in the Canadian CMAJ, our Canadian Medical Journal, showing that between assessors, people can consider reasonably foreseeable natural death to be weeks or months, or some considering that to be 5 years. That is not a standard application of these terms. And I think that it's very problematic that people can doctor shop until they find the most lax provider who will go ahead and end their lives. I think that's very troubling.
There will be an announcement today. We're all waiting for it on expanding MAiD eligibility to Canadians only suffering from mental illness. According to news reports, the special committee that's been examining that is going to recommend that the government reject that MAiD expansion. What is your reaction to that?
Well, I think if that is the case, that would be a very reasonable conclusion of the committee. The committee heard from many witnesses brought forward by the Senate, and all parties had proportional number of witnesses, and the vast majority were very concerned that this is not something that is safe to do. And that's because at this time, if we look at the kind of criteria for medical assistance in dying, it is supposed to be on the basis of not being able to improve irremediability. And with mental illness, we simply do not have the scientific data to be able to predict accurately who would never get better. So there could be potentially a few people who would never get better, but would we be wrong? We would be wrong in guessing who they would be, and we would be ending the lives of people who would have recovered with care. Just statistically, we would be making those errors. Even though people with mental illness can suffer, recovery and hope and suicide prevention must still be offered. We cannot offer MAiD safely to them.
Okay. We do have a minute or so left. I must ask you, just getting back to this idea of national standards. You have Quebec, which is going in one direction. It's to the point now where people can advance plan for MAiD and give advanced consent. And then you have a province like Alberta where it's very restrictive and it's essentially back to the 2016 regime. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's very interesting. So when Health Canada also testified at AMAD at this committee hearings that we're talking about, and they said, that they have given the kind of like broad legislation. So everything within that is legal. But yes, provinces can do less. And even many parliamentarians, as this is being legislated, said that the provinces should try to make this as safe as possible. So actually, I really commend Alberta's Bill 18 that passed. I was there at the press conference with Premier Smith and Justice Amory. Not only does it go back to reasonably foreseeable death, but as I mentioned before, that there's no definition, they defined it, right? A prognosis of 12 months or less. To be able to give clarity of who actually qualifies. And they have other safeguards in terms of reviewing the whole chart, etc. Quebec is actually breaking the law at this time by doing more than our criminal code allows. And so I find that very concerning.
Thank you so much for your time today and your perspective. Greatly appreciate it.
Nice to talk to you, Rob.
Dr. Ramona Coelho. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know, and this is News Radio.
You have questions.
Now You Know with Rob Snow has the answers.
On News Radio.
It's time for our Wednesday News Day panel with federal politics in focus. With the help of Neil Bordie, the president of Vox Strategies. Welcome back, Neil Bordie.
Good afternoon, Rob. It's always a pleasure to be here and invited into the listening realm of your listeners.
Thank you so much. Jordan Paquet is Vice President of Bluesky Strategy Group. Been far too long. How are you?
Great, Rob. How are you? It's great to be back.
Yeah, very good. That's good. That's good. Well, let's start with you, Jordan. What do you think about Prime Minister Carney's trip to the G7? What was accomplished, in your opinion?
These G7s are obviously times for the leaders of some of the world's economies. I know, and additionally, he was able to meet, I think, on the sides with India, perhaps make some advancements on some of the critical mineral files. But certainly, obviously, all eyes are on how interactions are made with Donald Trump, U.S. President Donald Trump, especially with the looming trade deadlines coming up, and as well with the Iran war kind of dominating the headlines as well, and the peace deal on that. So I think we got some news on that. We got some insights into what it looked like, and got to kind of see Carney's continued strategy and trying to sort of straddle both sides of the Donald Trump issue. On one hand, coming back to a domestic audience and really, playing the elbows up type argument, but then going overseas and face to face, and it's much more capitulation in many senses. So I guess we'll see when he comes back, kind of how it's spun and in his final news conference. But for now, yeah, it just seemed like your typical G7.
Neil, you have often said you need an announceable at the end of something like this. There's really not much of an announceable here for Prime Minister Carney. What do you think?
Well, I think his announcement is he had a nice family vacation in Ireland, And I think another announceable is he was able to do some shopping for summer fashions in Paris before arriving at the G7. But yeah, I mean, as far as I can tell, the big announceables, I think we might get to this, are the unintended announceables. Coming out of the G8, the G7, he's got some nice pictures with EU bureaucrats and some other politicians, and there'll be a communique released that was written, 2 weeks ago by some public servants in a dark room somewhere. But we won't ever know what was actually accomplished. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I don't normally brag about these things, but I was the director of the Leaders Program for the 2022 G8 in Muskoka. And I had to keep reminding people I worked with that the G8 is a G7 G8 is an informal meeting of leaders to discuss current events. So while there's some construct around it, and there'll be, as you said, some announceables in a communique after the meetings are all over, this is really just a chance for leaders to get together and discuss things that are on their own personal agenda with the whole anticipation that they will not get into the public.
Okay, so let's get into some of the more nitty-gritty then, Neil. What did you think of the hot mic moment? They're calling it the hot mic moment with Carney and Trump on Chinese EVs.
Well, I mean, a pull aside, or what they call a pull aside at the margins of a G7 meeting, where you have a few moments to talk to a leader one-on-one, is not an in-depth policy discussion across the table. This is 2 minutes. Hey, we've got, if I remember correctly, the hot mic quote is, "Hey, we've got some quotas on EVs, Chinese EVs coming into Canada." To which Donald Trump said, "Oh, I didn't know that," or something to that effect. I'm paraphrasing for your listeners. I think
like
there's
that.
more to come on. Yeah, I think there's more to come on this. Next year, if Canadians try and drive a Chinese EV into the United States on a vacation, are they going to get turned back at the border because they're driving a Chinese EV? I don't know, but I don't think you can read too much into a 30-second hot mic clip.
What did you think about that, Jordan?
Yeah, I don't think the hot mic moment alone was anything scandalous. I think it really pulled back the curtain a bit more on Prime Minister Carney's strategy in dealing with President Trump. And it almost seemed like he was just trying to go to him and say, like, look, I know we allowed some Chinese vehicles in, but don't worry, it's only a small little bit of our market share, and I thought you'd like that. And then I think the president replied, yeah, no, I do like that. What's going to be interesting is if the president goes away and then comes back and has another opinion about it later, which oftentimes happens, is that he will leave, he'll talk to his aides, and then he'll just go and explode on Truth Social. So I think, again, as I was saying kind of before, this was showing a bit of two different sides of the strategy that the prime minister is trying to use to deal with Trump. And that's, on the one hand, when he's in front of him, obviously it's all compliments and platitudes, but back home it's saying, like, you can't tell Canada what to do. We're going to diversify our markets and away from the U.S., and that's what we have to do. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see kind of what the fallout is. I think the president's still up speaking at a press conference now, but we'll check the transcript of that later.
All right. When we come back, I do want to ask you about the Prime Minister's comments that the Iran war was, quote unquote, worth it, something he told Caitlin Collins of CNN. And then we'll get a little bit into Tim Hodgson, his time now as Energy and Natural Resources Minister, and a column this week in the Financial Post where he describes himself as the Minister of National Unity. I'd like your thoughts on that when we return to News Radio.
No question goes unasked or unanswered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow returns on News Radio.
You're talking federal politics at midweek with Neil Bordie from Vox Strategies, Jordan Paquet, Vice President at Bluesky Strategy Group. The Prime Minister, Mark Carney, did an interview with Caitlin Collins of CNN. And let's listen to this where he's asked about the pending Iran deal with the United States.
Do you believe this war was worth it in Canada's view?
I think that, the number one risk, I answered this question 3 years ago or so at Davos, and I was asked, what's the number one risk in the global economy? And I said Iran. and it was at a time when people were not focused on Iran, because I've always believed that it's the biggest exporter of terror. It was hell-bent, sorry if I can say that, on getting a nuclear weapon, and the force multiplier on that, of course, was terrible. And so going and getting to a position where Iran is not going to have a nuclear weapon, look, I'm not naive about this. The reintegration of Iran, this is a regime that needs to learn to be civilized, needs to behave. That's why you have performance measures. Lots needs to happen. We all have to support it. But moving to this position where that's been taken off the table, yes, that's worth it.
Yes, that's worth it. What do you think of a comment like that, Neil Bordie, from the Prime Minister? Yeah, it's worth it.
Well, I'm glad he's finally made up his mind, Rob. This conflict began 10 short weeks ago. We talked around that time where Mr. Carney said he supported it, then he didn't support it, and then he supported it as long as Canada didn't have to be involved in it. So it's great that now that it appears to be coming to an end, that he's finally definitely made up his mind. And, you know, for him, for a politician, for a Canadian politician, it was worth it because Canada didn't have to give anything to see this outcome. This was heavy lifting by Israel and the United States of America. And, you know, Canadians should just be aware that he decided to give a long-form interview to CNN, a U.S. network, before he decided to give a long-form interview to a Canadian network on this or any other topic.
What are your thoughts on it, Jordan Paquet?
Yeah, I think this was this interview, to Neil's final point, was probably just a charm offensive for the U.S. president, going on an American news outlet and saying that he did a great job on this. But Neil's bang on, too, going back to that the Prime Minister couldn't pick a position before. And I think that might have had to do quite a bit with where his caucus was at on this. And we've seen he's had some troubles with some caucus relations over the past couple of weeks, different stories coming out. And so I think there's more domestic politics at play, as there generally is on these types of issues. But it's right. He came out and he was very supportive in the first statement, and then there was some grumbling inside a caucus. He really kind of backed down and tempered his comments. But now, you know, he's all for it again. So at the end of it, obviously, I think, you know, he'll start to see gas prices come down. That's obviously going to be good for affordability measures. So I think, you know, it's going into the summer, this is probably something that the Prime Minister is happy to see.
Okay, let's pivot to Tim Hodgson, the Energy and Natural Resources Minister, clearly someone Mark Carney trusts. And I would like to know what you think about what he has written this week in the Financial Post. Quote, "We have vast energy resources in our Western and Atlantic provinces. We're fortunate enough to operate some of the world's best hydro projects. We have built some of the safest nuclear assets in the world, and the territories are home to some of the best mining opportunities on Earth. The Canada-Alberta Memorandum of Understanding is a clear example of that in action." This is a Liberal cabinet minister saying these things. What do you think about what you're seeing in print, in his own words, from the Energy and Natural Resources Minister Tim Hodgson? Neil Bordie.
Well, I know some people are talking about Minister Hodgson as the star of the Liberal cabinet or something along those lines, and it's curious since he and his government have essentially accomplished nothing in the natural resources area in the almost 18 months since Mark Carney became Prime Minister. You know, Mr. Hodgson has published a few introductory words in strategies that have been written largely by departmental officials. And he's gone on a few speaking tours, but correct me if he's actually delivered anything, approved anything of any substance as Minister of Natural Resources. This was supposed to be a government that was going to build things at a speed not seen in generations. And these are all great words, but there's got to be more than words. There's got to be action. If his shining star, if his North Star is the Canada-Alberta Memorandum of Understanding, where by and large the federal government has downloaded the federal responsibilities to the province to accomplish, then I think that's not anything to hold up to great applause.
He also writes in this column, "As your Minister of Energy and Natural Resources, I have come to see my role in another way too, as kind of a Minister of National Unity." Minister of National Unity. I'm just wondering, have you heard that, Jordan? That Mr. Hodgson is the Minister of National. You have your ear to the ground, Jordan. What can you tell us about that?
Look, Tim Hodgson is obviously one of the most well-placed cabinet ministers. He definitely has the trust of the Prime Minister, and I understand, in the cabinet room, he's kind of the go-to guy on most issues. But yeah, I don't know if anyone's really going to brand him the Minister of National Unity. I think David Eby in BC might have something to say about that soon. But look, these are things that Conservatives have talked about, since Stephen Harper and before, about major energy projects being national unity projects. It's been the Liberals over the past decade or more that have been trying to kill them every step of the way. And so to Neil's point, nothing's actually getting built. And if nothing does end up getting built, I'm still very optimistic that it can. But if nothing gets built, it's going to have a bigger effect on national unity, because it's going to have the effect of having the football once again pulled out from the energy sector and the jobs that go with it. And when you have an election coming up in Quebec in the fall, that could produce a PQ government that are very opposed to the energy sector, along with the Alberta sovereignty debate coming up. There's some real issues here. And so there needs to be major progress on these files to actually start getting shovels in the ground. Otherwise, the national unity issue is going to come out and haunt them.
Okay. With the summer break looming, let's talk a little bit about unfinished business and stories to watch this summer in politics. This is News Radio.
Critical thinking is not dead.
Now you know with Rob Snow.
Returns on News Radio.
Here with Neil Brodie and Jordan Paquet, our Wednesday Newsday panel talking federal politics. So the House could rise tomorrow, Friday at the latest, for the summer break. What is unfinished business in your opinion, Jordan Paquet?
I think there's a couple things that they have to get through that they'll want done before summer. The spring economic update implementation. There's some contentious debates happening right now. Bill C-22, which is that lawful access bill that the police and the government really want to get through. And then the hate crimes bill as well. So I think that, there's a key thing obviously government has to do is get their spending bills through, and then they'll be happy to go off on the barbecue circuit this summer.
Agreed, Neil?
Yeah, my understanding is the lawful access bill is being pushed through. The other unfinished business is just to get politicians out of Ottawa. Life's generally better when they aren't figuring out ways to insert themselves into our lives, which inevitably costs us more money through our tax bill.
You're always such a ray of sunshine. Okay, what? Neil, give me just one now. Give me a political story to watch this summer.
Three things, and I'll be quick. The campaign in Alberta leading up to the October vote on whether they're going to have a referendum or not. The lead up to the Quebec election, which could lead to a referendum in Quebec. And then the NAFTA 2.0 CUSMA USMCA is expiring in a few weeks. And smart people on both sides of the border have no idea what's going to happen once that occurs.
Okay. A story to watch this summer in politics. Jordan, what do you think?
Well, I'm sure we'll be interested to see this summer if the Prime Minister's learned to flip a pancake at the Stampede. But I wouldn't be a good Islander if I didn't take you back to Charlottetown mid-July, where Council of Federations meeting, and so that meeting will be happening. Premier Rob Lance is the chair of COF, and so all the premiers will be. We'll be out in Charlottetown, hopefully sharing a good lobster dinner with some oysters and chatting about obviously ways to improve trade in Canada. But no, it should be a good time down there, I'm sure.
Okay, well, lobster, yes. Oysters may be a bit of a struggle. The oyster situation in Prince Edward Island is
it needs some support for sure. Yeah.
Not very good right now.
And don't forget to vote Ernie Clement into the Major League Baseball All-Star Game.
That's right. Okay. Okay. And maybe, Vladimir Guerrero could hit another home run and make it
That would be awesome, too.
For this season. Yeah. All right. To the two of you, thank you so much. We shall be speaking in the months ahead.
Have a fantastic rest of the week, Rob, and you too, Jordan.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a great day.
Yeah. Neil Brodie is president of Vox Strategies, and Jordan Paquet, vice president at Bluesky Strategy Group. our Wednesday Newsday political panel. Talkback is coming up right after the latest breaking news. This is News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to Talkback. It's 2 hours of debate and discussion on the big issues of the day. It's a big issue today, because today is the 10th anniversary of the legalization of MAiD in Canada. Medical assistance in dying. It was 10 years ago today that the bill that legalized medical assistance in dying received royal assent. June 17th, 2016. And over the last 10 years, more than 76,000 Canadians have chosen to end their lives with the help of a medical professional. For the last year that there are official numbers available, which is 2024, more than 16,000 Canadians chose MAiD. 10 years after MAiD became legal, MAiD is every bit as controversial today as it was a decade ago, perhaps even more so. And that's because of a significant change to the law that was made 5 years ago when the eligibility for MAiD was expanded because of a court ruling in Quebec that allowed Canadians whose death was not reasonably foreseeable to be eligible for MAiD. And that's why now there's Track 1 for MAiD and Track 2 for MAiD. But over the years, there have been other developments as well. For example, in Quebec, Quebecers, and only Quebecers as of now, can pre-plan for MAiD. They can plan in advance for MAiD. And it's been that way for the last 2 years. Advance consent for MAiD. And there are calls for that to become Canada-wide. There is even a bill in the Parliament that would ask for this to be the case nationwide, to allow Canadians all across the country to give advance consent for MAiD. Today, a special committee that has been examining MAiD for years will issue a report on what was to be the next major expansion of MAiD eligibility, allowing Canadians whose only medical condition is a mental illness to access MAiD. That was supposed to come into effect next year. But according to the news reports, that special committee that's been studying this is going to recommend the government not proceed with that expansion. That's going to be a big news story later today. It's going to be tabled in just a few hours, that report. As well, in another recent development, the Alberta government under Premier Danielle Smith has made that province the most restrictive of all the provinces to access MAiD, limiting MAiD eligibility to those whose natural death is reasonably foreseeable within 12 months, essentially banning Track 2 MAiD applications in that province. Over the last 10 years, I've been taking many calls from many Canadians who have many opinions on MAiD. I have heard from family members who have told me about their loved ones passing away peacefully at home, surrounded by friends and family, and leaving this world on their own terms. I have heard from other Canadians who have described the same sort of procedure, shall I say, in less than glowing terms. It was not a good experience. I have heard from Canadians who have said, as Sue Rodriguez said so many decades ago, if I cannot consent to my own death, whose body is this? And who owns my life? And I have heard from other Canadians who have grave concerns about MAiD, who think the entire MAiD regime is wrong, is immoral, and that MAiD has cheapened the value of human life in Canada. This is always a difficult topic to talk about, but it is something that is talked about daily in millions of Canadian homes. I can tell you we have had conversations in our own family about MAiD, difficult conversations, emotional conversations, conversations people would rather avoid. But on this show, we try not to avoid difficult conversations. And this is a significant anniversary, 10 years of MAiD in Canada. One of the most consequential social policy developments in this country in the last decade, maybe in Canadian history. Remember, in 1993, the Supreme Court of Canada, in the Rodriguez case, upheld the ban on doctor-assisted suicide, and then 22 years later, reversed its own ruling and set the country on a path, this path, the same path it has been on for the last 10 years. Here's what we want to know today, on this day. After everything we've learned about MAiD in the last decade, now that MAiD has been legal in Canada for 10 years now, how do you feel about the MAiD law? Does it strike the right balance for you, or has it gone further than you're comfortable with? How do you feel about the MAiD law today? Does it strike the right balance for you, or has it gone further than you're comfortable with? 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. That's our call-in line. If you've never called before, just mention that. We'll make your call a priority. And let's talk about it. 10 years of MAiD in Canada. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. This is Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
This is the 10th anniversary of the legalization of MAiD in Canada. Medical assistance in dying. How do you feel about the MAiD law? Does it strike the right balance for you, or has it gone too far? 1-833-668-2577. There are 3 lines available. We start in Halifax today. First-time caller there, Lori. Hello, Lori.
Hi there.
Hi, Lori. What's your opinion?
Well, I'll be honest, I don't know. I'm not completely up on the latest laws, but I'm in the healthcare field, and so I'm a bit knowledgeable about it. But from a personal standpoint, 2 things. One, I do have a bit of a problem with healthcare providers bringing up MAiD to patients. I thought when it first passed years ago that it had to come from the patient to initiate it. And, I've heard of a couple of stories in the news about, patients being approached and being told that MAiD should be their option and that they should be choosing MAiD, which I just so strongly disagree with. And I just don't know how the law is written about it, but that's one of my concerns.
Okay, well, I can tell you the new law, if I could, just to bring you up to date, the new law in Alberta, for example, which is the most restrictive MAiD law in the country, because the different provinces are doing this in different ways. In the medical field, the patient has to bring it up. The medical staff cannot bring it up unless the patient does. That's the law in Alberta.
Good.
And do you think that's the way it should be?
It should be everywhere. I think it should be that way everywhere. Yeah.
All right. Okay.
And then the second thing, I strongly believe in advance, being able to choose MAiD in advance. So for example, my father had dementia, and when it was time for decisions to be made, there was different family members had a different opinion and different view on how things should go. And by the person themselves making that decision, and so my father wasn't allowed because of the laws at that time, could not do advanced. He couldn't say, if I get to the point where I don't recognize my family, I would like to have MAiD. That sort of, decision making. It would have been nice to have had to come from him as opposed to family members having to discuss with the physician what they think our father wanted, but people disagreeing on it, and it just made for some uncomfortableness, and just so that's where I'm at with that. And in terms of mental health, I haven't researched that part enough to really know. I do worry a little bit about the laws when it comes to MAiD with regards to mental health, but but certainly with my father's situation, it would have been nice if he could have made that decision ahead of time.
Okay. Thank you so much for your call. 1-833-668-2577 to have your say on Talkback. From Halifax to Calgary, Liz is on the line. Hello, Liz.
Hey, Rob, how are you doing?
I'm very good, Liz. What's your opinion?
So I'm actually kind of experienced in this topic because I know 3 people who went through it. One of them was actually my 24-year-old niece. So she had cancer in her tongue. And I think what a lot of people are missing when they are against it is how horrible of a death that somebody could experience if they didn't get to choose the option to go peacefully. I work in the veterinary industry, so I see all the time animals get that gift of a peaceful exit, and we don't do the same often for people. I had a friend who also had cancer, and she had booked her MAiD and was ready to go because she said she didn't want to die alone and scared in her home. Unfortunately, she didn't make it to her MAiD appointment, and that's exactly what happened. And that's all I can remember of her now is that's how she had passed away. And my grandmother had dementia like the previous caller, and I wish that I'm all about people being able to choose it ahead of time because my grandma was too far ahead, and she died a horrible, absolutely traumatic death in front of my father because she didn't get to do MAiD because she was too far advanced. So I don't like the Alberta laws. I think that we should be able to pick it ahead of time. It is a peaceful, it is a gift, it is a peaceful exit. People don't, if no one's ever witnessed somebody dying in certain situations, it is absolutely traumatic and awful, and that is no way for anybody to leave this world.
Yeah, the Alberta laws, I understand it bans the ability for anyone to say plan for MAiD and to offer advance consent.
I would love to plan for me. If I get to the point where I get, like I'm 50 now, if I get to that point, I would probably move back to Ontario so that I could plan ahead because I don't want to die a horrible death, and I've seen it. It's awful.
Well, you'd have to move to Quebec because that's the only province where that's allowed.
Damn it. Well, let's hope that we change by the time I go.
Okay. All right. Yeah, it's interesting how popular that is with some people, the idea of being allowed to offer advance consent for MAiD. Very interesting. Thank you. 1-833-668-2577. As we discuss medical assistance in dying today on this, the 10th anniversary of its legalization. Have your say. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
It's the 10th anniversary of the legalization of MAiD in Canada. How do you feel about that? The MAiD law in Canada? Do you think it strikes the right balance as it is? 1-833-668-2577. Mo is in Calgary. Hello, Mo.
Hello, how are you?
Very good, Mo. Thank you. What's your opinion?
My opinion is UPC in Alberta has got to go. I've been a UPC, and I'm going to vote NDP because it's not up to the government to decide what they're going to do for me. And I have witnessed, terrible things in my family. My father, due to a medical accident in the hospital, had to go into nursing home for 9 years, and he suffered. And I just can't see it. I've put my own dogs to sleep, and I'd rather go that way than, I just don't agree with Alberta. I just want to do it on my own.
So in Alberta, it's your death must be reasonably foreseeable within 12 months. Essentially, you must be terminally ill and you're expected to pass away within 12 months. Then, and really only then, can you access MAiD. And you think that's too restrictive?
I think so.
Okay. So when it comes, okay, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I would rather have a blanket over Canada saying, yes, you can do whatever you want with your own body. I'd like to leave it in my will. I have, do not resuscitate and make the decision to pull the plug kind of thing, because I don't want to go the way some of my family members have gone.
Right. So again, you are someone else who would like to be able to put it all down on paper and have your wishes expressed in case you didn't have the capacity to consent to, say, a MAiD procedure at the time.
Yes. And when they say only, people whose mind is gone or something, that's not reasonable, because how can they make their own decision if they're not really connected to the everyday?
Right. So you really do think that in the Alberta case, and you said you were a United Conservative Party supporter, with this, they've lost you, that it just goes too far?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Okay. I appreciate your call. I appreciate your call, Mo. Thank you. Let's bring on Shelley. And Shelley, we're a little tight on time, so you can start your thought, and then I'll bring you right back on and give you a few more minutes if you would like, Shelley, in Airdrie. Okay. Hi, Shelley.
Thanks. Hi, Rob. Thank you for taking my call.
You're welcome.
This is something I feel extremely strong about. In the first place, we aren't God. We don't get to say when we leave this earth. We didn't. God brought us here. He's our creator, and he decides when we leave and how we leave. Now, I'm 81 years old, and I've been there. I've been to the depths. I know what it is to almost die, and I've suffered through this. I'm not out of it yet. I'm 9 months into this sickness, and I know it's a stomach problem. That's fine. I've suffered what I've suffered, hoping God would take me and willing it to happen, and it hasn't, so it's up to him. And I'm happy with that. I would love the government to get out of my business and my life. The government has no place in a lot of these things, but that's another issue. Anyway,
okay.
I have been
They're playing the music. They're playing the music. So I'll, if you want to come back on after the latest breaking news, you're opposed to it on faith grounds or religious grounds. I'll bring you back on. You can explain your position a little bit more. But we have to stop here. And there are lines available at 1-833-668-2577. So have your say and share your opinion as well. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
It's been 10 years of MAiD in Canada. This is the anniversary of MAiD becoming legal in Canada. Medical assistance in dying. How do you feel about the MAiD law? Does it strike the right balance for you? Or has it gone further than you're comfortable with? 1-833-668-2577. We were speaking with Shelley in Airdrie. Are you still there, Shelley?
Yes, I am.
Yes, so you were saying you're not in favor of MAiD based on religious grounds. Is that right?
Well, it's on moral grounds as well.
Moral grounds, okay.
Like, we're not animals. Sure, we put down our pets. I've done it. But we're not animals. We have a soul. Our animals do not. That's the way God created this universe. So, yeah, he's my moral conscience, and I'm going to let him decide. I've gone through the pain. I'm going to maybe still go through it, and that's as it is. I've watched my parents go through it. But you know what? We're raising a whole generation of entitled kids. They don't know what it is to suffer anything. They've got everything handed to them. So now they're even getting death. And I was also offered that by our home care system when I called for home care during my business here. And I was offered MAiD. I could not believe what I was hearing. I asked for that law where, they have to approach us. No. They were quite forward about it. So, people, and you better understand another thing. When you're undergoing something like this, you better understand the ramifications of what exactly that does in your body. It's not a painless death. Read it up, people. Get educated before you make this kind of decision. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Shelley. Yeah, I appreciate your opinion. That is a minority opinion so far as we make our way through Talkback. Let's go to Cambridge, Ontario. Paul is there. Hello, Paul.
Yes, hello there.
Yes, hello, Paul.
Hello. I just have a quick experience, and this is before MAiD about 20 years ago. And my grandfather was in the hospital, and they were told us that it was some kind of lung condition. I can't remember exactly. Emphysema, I think. He wasn't breathing and so forth. Anyway, long story short, they recommended taking him off life support, and they didn't. And he was in hospital for, I think, 3 or 4 weeks. Then he was discharged, and he lived another 8 years. So, it's a very, very slippery slope we have here. And, I'm in favor of more safeguards there. I'm not against it, but I'm more safeguards. I think it's certainly a decision that has to be made when you're in the right frame of mind. Maybe years before you get sick, you should have your wishes or something filled out. Says this is what's going to happen if this happens, right? And then you can make your own decision as opposed to somebody else making the decision for you. I think that's extremely important. And I think you have to be in your right frame of mind as well, right? So I think that.
Well, right now you do have to be in your right, as you say, in your right frame of mind to be able to consent to this.
Yeah, and I think
if you have lost the capacity to consent, then you can't have MAiD. But what you're saying is you would support a policy like they have in the province of Quebec, where you can pre-plan essentially and give advance consent.
Because again, it's your choice, it's your life, right?
Okay.
If you're sane about it. I mean, again, you have to have good advice because there are people that commit suicide even when they're young, right? So, but they obviously are not in the right frame of mind. I think that's the real key difference right here. Is looking at your age, what the condition is, the terminal condition you have, and being in the right frame of mind. But I'm totally against having someone telling you or offering you MAiD. I just think back to the situation with my grandfather. They said, hey, that was the recommendation, take him off life support. Well, he lived 8 more years. That's a lot of life, right, to make that kind of decision because you just don't know what can happen, right, when you're taking off life support. So that's, it's a decision. I think they made the right decision, but they could have gone the other way and taken him off life support, and you just never knew what would have happened.
Okay, Paul, thank you for your opinion. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577 is staying in that part of the country in Kitchener. Dorothy is in Kitchener. Hello, Dorothy.
Good afternoon, Rob. How are you?
Hi, Dorothy. I'm very good, Dorothy. Thank you for calling. What's your opinion today?
I have been involved with Dying with Dignity. I subscribe to their website and email and everything, so you can learn a lot of the facts. I'm hearing a lot of fiction on your show this afternoon. A lot of people have misconceptions. Now, the fact that the province of Quebec allows advance request is still a violation of the Criminal Code of Canada.
Yes.
So the Criminal Code of Canada, we have petitions, and the committee has recommended that the federal government, and it has to come from the federal government, amend the Criminal Code to allow for advanced request. Advance request requires legal document certifying that you are of sound mind and have the capacity to make your decision. It allows those of us who want to go that route when the time comes to prepare a legal document that will be honored by everybody, medical profession, family, everybody else, because families do get into different opinions when they have to make the decision. So it's very important that we be allowed to make advance request. I am well into my very old age, above 90. my worst nightmare, because I don't tolerate medications. Neither did my mother. And my mother ended up with dementia, thanks to being over-medicated. I have seen that happen countless of times in my family and other families. That's my worst nightmare, that if I fall down and break a leg or something and I have to go to the hospital, they are going to give me medications and I will have dementia within a week, guaranteed. That takes away my right to use MAiD when I want to. So the advanced request is, to me, very important. And I have written to my member of parliament. I urge others who feel that way to write to their federal member of parliament and get the Criminal Code of Canada changed enough that we can have legal advance requests. The province of Quebec is doing it illegally, and the federal government made the statement, Mr. Carney, that they would not interfere.
They would not interfere. That's right. That's right. You're accurate there. Yes, yes, yes. I'm not sure. You said there was a lot of misinformation here. You haven't outlined that and why you believe that is the case. I don't think anything that I have said could be described as misinformation. I've been following it very closely for many, many years. Thank you for your call. All the best to you. All our lines are available right now on the 10th anniversary of the legalization of MAiD. That's our topic today on Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
This is the 10th anniversary of the legalization of MAiD in Canada. We are asking today, how do you feel about the MAiD law? Do you think it strikes the right balance for you, or has it gone over the years, because there has been changes to the law, others have been proposed, has it gone further than you're comfortable with? 1-833-668-2577. I know it's a deeply personal topic for many, but we will give you a full hearing if you choose to call today. All of our phone lines are available. It's very controversial. It's always been controversial. It may be more controversial today than it was 10 years ago because the law has changed. Of course, someone who passes from MAiD on their own terms, surrounded by all of their loved ones in their own home, that never makes the news. It's only the controversial cases that ever make the news. And there have been controversial MAiD cases in the news over the years. Just recently, there was the case of a 26-year-old man from Ontario who had type 1 diabetes and was blind in one eye, was suffering from depression, was dealing with a substance abuse issue, was not terminally ill, and was denied MAiD in Ontario. And instead, he went to BC, where he was approved, and that's where he died. And his family didn't even know, and are calling on the matter to be investigated because they claim he should never have been approved for MAiD. There was recently in the news the so-called Tim Hortons case. The doctor in that case conducted the assessment for a man's application for MAiD in the parking lot of a Tim Hortons, and then drove the man to the location where MAiD was administered. This was a patient who was homeless and living in a car, and was assessed in the parking lot of a Tim Hortons. We had a case in British Columbia where a judge actually intervened to stop a doctor from performing MAiD on a woman who had bipolar disorder. This was a woman who her application was denied in Alberta. She went to BC. The doctor there approved it, and the woman's partner took the whole case to court, and it was halted. There was another case in BC, again involving a man with bipolar disorder who was in a psychiatric hospital, was released from the psychiatric hospital on a day pass, went to a doctor. The doctor approved him for MAiD, and the procedure was performed. One of the earliest cases was in London, Ontario. Made national news at the time. involved a man who was a long-term patient in an acute care hospital. The hospital administration essentially labeled him a bed blocker, and they didn't think he needed to be in the hospital. And it was alleged, because it was caught on camera, that the hospital administrators were pressuring him to have MAiD, which he refused. There was also testimony at the Veterans Affairs Committee. Some of you might remember several veterans went to Veterans Affairs seeking various supports to help with things like PTSD or mobility aids, a ramp into a house, a wheelchair, an electric wheelchair. And the veterans were saying, instead of support from Veterans Affairs, they were offered MAiD. There were so many cases like that involving veterans that the Veterans Affairs Minister at the time, Lawrence McCauley, issued an apology. 1-833-668-2577. Ron is in Okotoks. Hello, Ron.
Hi, Rob.
Yeah, hi, Ron.
Yeah, so I'm deadly opposed to MAiD. I think when people talk about shortening the life of a pet or an animal and comparing that to a human being, animals don't have souls. Humans have souls. We're created by God. And furthermore, the 10 Commandments says, thou shalt not kill. And when you have MAiD, you're committing murder on yourself. So I think people need to rethink this whole thing about MAiD. I think it's gone way overboard.
Okay, so you're opposed to it on religious grounds.
Well,
right?
Religious and moral. I mean,
religious and moral. Okay.
Yeah. Religious and moral. I don't. Some people
might say, okay, we're a secular society, and we don't want to write the laws based on, say, the Bible, for example, or any religious text for that matter, in a secular society.
Well, we're founded as a Christian country. In most countries, where North America certainly, and that's where we live. So I think we need to respect some of those guidelines or commandments that are given to us by the 10 Commandments.
Okay, fair enough. Some people might say it's immoral to let people suffer needlessly, especially if they don't want to suffer. This is about their own personal choice, for that matter, right?
Yeah, you hear a lot of that, and I think it's a lame excuse. I think most people that are near death, are they suffering? I would think the medical profession are treating them so that they do not suffer. And furthermore, don't the doctors take an oath to support life rather than terminate it?
Okay, thank you, sir. I appreciate your point of view. 1-833-668-2577. Lots of lines available and lots of time to take your call on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Now, the 10th anniversary of the legalization of MAiD in Canada. We are asking for your thoughts on the MAiD law and whether it strikes the right balance for you. Give us a call at 1-833-668-2577 to Tom in Calgary today. Hello, Tom.
Good morning, Rob.
Yes, hi, Tom. What's your opinion, Tom?
My opinion is it's my body, my choice. I don't want to be in a position in a hospital where I'm nothing but a burden on the family, and especially if I'm not cognitive enough to make a choice. So in advance, of course, I have said that if I'm going to end that condition, let that hunk of meat go. Remember me when I was good. So definitely favor of the MAiD program. And I'm in my 70s, so who knows when it'll come for me, but that's just the way I want it.
Okay. Let me ask you this, though. Let's say you're not terminally ill. You're not going to die anytime soon. You may be suffering from some health problems. You may have diabetes or a mental health issue or something like that. Do you think you should still be able to access MAiD, or should it just be if you're gravely ill and you're expected to die. You're near the end of your life. What do you think?
I believe that if it's that bad, whether it's mental or physical, let me go. Don't leave me lying there being a burden on my family. I wouldn't want to do that when I knew everything, and I wouldn't want to do it anytime. So just use MAiD, let me go.
So really it should be, I've asked this from time to time, who should be able to access MAiD? It sounds as though you think anyone at really any time for any condition. Or maybe even if they don't have a condition. Really? Wow. That's a very...
I still have a medical opinion as to what what shape I'm in. But if I'm not me, the way I am now, and I don't look a nice family or anything like that, that's it. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be a burden.
Right.
So, yeah.
But it all comes down to you and your own personal wishes and your own autonomy, if you will.
Yes, definitely. And as far as the religious side of it, that should not have, it's my choice, my body.
Your choice, your body. Okay, thank you. Very interesting. Tom in Calgary, thank you for all your calls in hour number one. We'll pick it up in hour number two. The Minister of Justice was commenting on this today, a heavy-duty file for him, as it has been for ministers of justice over the last decade or so, since MAiD became legal in Canada. The latest breaking news is coming up next. This is News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
It was June 17th of 2016, 10 years ago today. The MAiD became legal in Canada. Medical assistance in dying. And as of the most recent report, 76,000 Canadians have opted for MAiD in the last 10 years. About 16,000 Canadians or so chose MAiD in the year 2024. Mentioned some of the recent developments on MAiD. It was about 5 years ago. Eligibility for MAiD was expanded because of a court ruling in Quebec that allowed Canadians whose death was not reasonably foreseeable to become eligible for MAiD. And that led to the development of what is called Track 1 for MAiD, which is the vast majority of cases, and then Track 2 for MAiD, which is a small percentage of the other cases. In Quebec, this has been brought up, the ability to give advance consent for MAiD. That is a Quebec thing only. It is a Quebec law that the federal government has said it will not challenge, but Quebecers can plan in advance for MAiD. It's been that way for a couple of years now. There have been calls, and there has been legislation in the Parliament that has gone nowhere, I must say, that would see that become the case nationwide with an amendment to the Criminal Code of Canada, and all Canadians would then be allowed to get advance consent for MAiD. That has not happened yet. This was the year that the Alberta government, the UCP government led by Premier Danielle Smith, made Alberta the most restrictive Canadian province to access MAiD, limiting the eligibility to those whose natural death is reasonably foreseeable within 12 months. That essentially bans Track 2 MAiD applications in that province. It has its supporters, and it has many, many critics. The big development today will be a special report from the Special Committee of Parliamentarians that has spent years talking about expanding the MAiD eligibility, that it would allow Canadians whose only medical condition is a mental illness, and they too would be allowed to access MAiD. This was supposed to come into effect, I believe it was in the year 2023, and then it was delayed, and then it was delayed again. According to the news reports, we basically have members of this committee who have leaked some of the details to the news media. The committee is going to recommend to the government that it not proceed with that expansion. Now, the current Minister of Justice is Sean Fraser, the Nova Scotia member of Parliament, and he was asked about this on Parliament Hill today. Where MAiD is going from here, and he essentially said, I haven't heard the clip yet, but from what I've been told, he has said they're going to look at it this summer. Let's roll the tape on that, please, Curtis.
It's very difficult. There's very few people among us in Ottawa who don't know people who've gone through the process of medical assistance in dying. These are the most deeply personal conversations that you can have as a family member, as a neighbor, as a friend, as a policymaker. When we make changes to the criminal code, obviously they have national application. We have to make sure that we develop rules that can apply that broadly, but that are informed by the deeply personal circumstances. This isn't easy work, which is why I'm going to take the time necessary to fully understand the recommendations of the committee and the evidence that underpins those recommendations.
Okay, so again, that committee that has spent years looking into this is going to table a report today. What we have been asking today, and we again make the appeal for your calls. MAiD has been legal in Canada for a decade. How do you feel about the MAiD law today? Does it, as it stands right now, strike the right balance for you? Has it gone too far? Has it gone further than you're comfortable with? Again, the number to call is 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. And if you've never called before, just mention that, and we'll make your call a priority. Let's go to St. Jacobs, Ontario. Deb is up next. Hi, Deb.
Yes, hi. I have not called
Deb.
Before.
I appreciate your call today.
Yes, this is very interesting to me because I totally agree with MAiD, and I really wish we had the opportunity to have the advance request. And to tell you the truth, I was going to call my lawyer today to make an appointment just to put whatever I can in legal form so that, if the law came in that I could do that in a year from now. Let's say I had a stroke and I couldn't speak. And I had no quality of life. I'm telling you right now, I do not want to live like that at the age I am now, and it can happen at any age, right? Strokes. So I think it's totally our right to do what we want. If it's based on people's religions, and if they choose not to, they don't have to. But that's not the way. Like I choose to do what I want with my body. I agree with what Tom said. Each to their own. And right now I'm of sound mind. I can make that choice. So if I have a stroke, and my father has had a stroke, I've seen it happen. Luckily, he can communicate and he lives a good quality of life, which is fabulous. But that doesn't happen to everybody. Some people can't communicate. Some people can never walk again. Some people are in old age, the nursing care homes for years like that with no quality of life. And that's not how I want to live.
Yeah, I understand that. And I appreciate your point of view. You do think, though, that there should be safeguards or guardrails, do you not?
Yeah, no, absolutely, I do. Like, yes. I mean, not everybody, maybe, as people have said, are the right frame of mind, can make those choices. But I still think in some cases, if people want to end their life, they're going to do it the way they want to. They will, drive into a lake or jump off a bridge or whatever. So you're not going to stop them. If they want to end their life, they'll end their life. And I'd just rather do it with dignity and controlled. And I've told my kids now, I lost my husband before the age of 58. I saw him die of terminal cancer, it was terminal cancer. He chose not to, which is fine. He was at home, but I saw the way death played out. And to tell you the truth, I have kids in their early 30s. If that happened to me, I will choose to end my life. I won't let them go through that again because it was sad, very sad.
Okay, thank you for sharing your opinion, sharing your thoughts, Deb. That's been a popular viewpoint today. Lots of phone lines available there, folks, to share your opinion today. At 1-833-668-2577, 1-833-668-2577. I'm Rob Snow. It's hour number 2 of Talkback. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
I was mentioning earlier in the program, when MAiD goes exactly according to someone's wishes and they pass away peacefully, that never makes the news, even though that's the vast majority of cases, that it's only controversial MAiD related stories that ever actually make the news. And there have been cases where people have sought out MAiD. This is one of the other controversies. They have sought out MAiD, but their approval was rejected, essentially because the facility is a hospital that was founded in the Catholic tradition, a Catholic church. The Catholic Church used to run, so many hospitals all across the country, and they have roots in the teachings of the Catholic Church. And we have seen cases arise where those hospitals are refusing to perform the procedure on religious grounds. There was such a case in British Columbia that led to a lawsuit. The woman in that case was very much at the end of her life, and the hospital refused to perform the procedure, and she was transferred to another hospital against her wishes, causing great stress to both her and her family. There was a very similar story in Antigonish, Nova Scotia, that made national news at the time, where a woman requested MAiD, but it was a Catholic-affiliated hospital, and it refused to perform the procedure. And she, too, had to be transferred to another facility, which the family argued caused great stress and needless suffering for someone at a very, very vulnerable time. And there have also, speaking of other controversies, there have been numerous stories over the years of people who have sought out MAiD, not because they're at the end of their lives, but rather because of their social circumstance. Rather because they feel their lives just aren't worth living anymore because of their living conditions, whatever the case might be. Perhaps they can't get adequate housing, or they can't find accessible housing because, for example, maybe they have mobility issues. There was the story of a man from Quebec who was a quadriplegic who developed bed sores because of a lack of home supports, home care, what have you. And he applied for, and it was approved for MAiD. Not because he was about to die, but rather because he lost the hope that social services would ever be there to give him some kind of help. There was a man in Surrey, British Columbia, who sought out MAiD because he was living in deep poverty. And he felt that MAiD was his only option. This was not the MAiD regime as it was supposed to be when the legislation was drafted and then passed 10 years ago. And yet, in some cases, these people are no longer with us. And that's why we're asking today how you feel about the MAiD law. And whether you think, when you hear stories like that, does it strike the right balance for you? Or has it gone further than you're comfortable with? At 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. We can also talk about the divergence between Quebec and Ontario. It's very interesting. It's the federal government that has to deal with so much of this because it involves amendments to the criminal code, and yet you have two provinces going in very different paths, very different directions when it comes to their views on MAiD and who should be able to access MAiD and when you should be able to start thinking about accessing MAiD. We'll talk about that as we make our way through the program. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know, and this is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
To Annie in Calgary, up next on MAiD. on this 10th anniversary of MAiD being legal in Canada. Hello, Annie.
Hello?
Yes, hi, Annie. Good to hear from you. Go ahead.
Yeah, you wanted to know opinions. So, experience is, for me, is a friend who took MAiD, and that was recently, a few months back, and had suffered for several years with cancer. Was on a roller coaster with meds that worked, and then they didn't, and then they did and didn't. And he waited and waited until he absolutely knew that he didn't want to be here anymore. He had already applied for MAiD. He'd done all of his diligence and gotten it set up. And as it came near the end, it became very dire, and he was able to say, "I'm done." And as a result, he went through with it, and his family said their suffering stopped, his suffering stopped, and it was a sad, yes, but also glorious time because of the pain that stopped. So for that reason, and for other reasons, I think it's a godsend. I also have a friend who has dementia and has had it for several years, has gradually gone downhill, and from a very early stage was asking, "Why can't you get me gone?" And to this day is still suffering because of the in and out nature of that unfortunate and cruel disease. His family is suffering. It's causing all kinds of hardships, and he himself is suffering and going through care that the people are giving the care are suffering, and it is endless, and he can't get MAiD because he didn't arrange for it when he was before he was diagnosed with this disease. So I would wish that there was a way to ask for an approval, and still the application process is lengthy, that's fine, but to consider, have the medical system consider that there are other factors involved besides just I'm of sound mind, because he was of sound mind. He still comes in and out of that, and he still knows that he is suffering and that he's trapped in his body, and it's horrible to watch.
So then you would support then something like an advanced request policy.
I would support an advanced request, and there could be, stopgap measures in it. I mean, if you don't want to do it, you don't have to. So if somebody doesn't agree with it, just don't do it. It's simple. If you apply for it and you get approved, it doesn't mean you have to go through with it. They will ask you right till the end, is this something you really want? And they check and double check that is, in fact, your wishes. And it's pretty easy to tell when somebody's serious about that. And so when you're not of sound mind and body, there's so many different degrees of that it's such a catchphrase. But there ought to be ways and means of identifying when someone can still have a rational mind, even if there's other things going on. And so, yes.
Yes. But you outlined, the suffering that your friend who had terminal cancer went through. But what about somebody whose life is not terminally ill? It was someone who's not terminally ill.
Well, that's
someone who may have. Sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. That's the second person I was describing who has dementia. They're not terminally ill. They could last, 20 years,
Years, sure, yes.
My friend has been in this for 5 years now, and it has been a living hell for this person and their family, who are really, honestly, they're getting sick themselves.
Do you feel, do you feel the same way about mental illness? If somebody has, say, bipolar disorder or something like that, do you think?
Well, there's a lot. I think, I'm not an expert on these disorders, but I can tell you that bipolar there's different degrees of bipolar as well. And so I don't think you can make a carte blanche statement about a certain kind of disease. I think that there ought to be a way for medical people to assess somebody who's in situations like that and say,
but you think they should at least be able to be assessed?
Be assessed, right? Discuss it,
okay.
And then they'll,
right.
Discuss it and have it open as an option.
Okay, thank you. Yep. Annie in Calgary, first-time caller there. Be right back after the latest breaking news on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
It's the 10th anniversary of the legalization of MAiD in Canada. June 17th, 2016, that came into effect in this country. How do you feel about the MAiD law? Does it strike the right balance? Has it gone further than you're comfortable with? Should it go further than things stand right now? 1-833-668-2577. Virginia is up next on Talkback. Hello, Virginia.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very good, Virginia. Thank you for calling. Your opinion, please.
My opinion is this, and a lot of people are going to yell and scream when I say this, but I personally think they need to close the door on it. Get rid of it completely and totally, because it opens a whole can of worms to all kinds of other problems, and not just in the death and dying aspect of severe injured or sick patients. It opens up problems in the healthcare system when a person goes in and they're sick and they can be saved, and then they sign a form that says, oh, I don't want any treatment. Then that person dies. That's what my brother did. He signed a form, and if he wouldn't have signed that form, he'd still be alive today. It also creates other problems. The doctors have taken a Hippocratic oath to save lives. This is legalized murder. And then it also provides problems with children that are born that don't have limbs, or they could join twins and what have you. So my question is where do you draw the line? And you cannot draw the line. Your life is not your own. It belongs to God. You were sent here for...
Well, it's the government's... I suppose it would be the government's job to draw the line, and the government has drawn lines and then has been forced to erase lines and draw new lines.
You open up another can of worms. Who's to say the person that's in the hospital is actually going to follow the rules? Maybe you got some psychotic doctor, God knows what, and he kills you off because he can. This has happened several times. I think getting rid of MAiDs totally is the way to go, regardless of how we like it or don't like it. Get rid of it. Throw it out. We have not the right to kill, and it doesn't matter who you are, what you are, or what have you. If you're going to sustain the life of a person that's born without limbs and just has a head on their body, then what are you doing killing somebody that has a mental disorder? That doesn't seem right to me.
You're using some very extreme examples. I mean, in the vast majority of the cases that are happening when it comes to MAiD in Canada, these are people of their own free will who don't want to suffer at the end of their lives. Most of them are in their 70s, and they have a terminal illness, and they do not want to suffer in the final few days or weeks of their life. And you don't think that should be allowed?
I'm not agreeing with you. You can argue till the cows come home, and the answer is I do not agree with it. You should take it out and get rid of it, because nobody knows where to stop at what they're doing. They make an excuse for this, an excuse for that, an excuse for the other. You don't have that right to even decide if you're going to live or die yourself, because that is suicide. That is against the Lord's commandments, whether you're religious or not. You're put here to endure to the end.
Well, you say whether you're religious or not. Some people are not. And some people do not subscribe to that faith.
Same thing.
Well, it does matter. Of course, you say it doesn't matter, but of course it matters.
It's okay for me to walk into a bank and shoot somebody
ma'am, you don't have to yell at me. Don't yell at me. I'm not one of your kids, okay? Don't yell at me. Are you finished? Okay, well, I mean, the caller mentioned, well, what about lines and safeguards? 10 years ago, when the law came into effect, it was C-14 at the time, there were a number of conditions that had to be met in order for someone to qualify for medical assistance in dying. You had to be at least 18 years old. You're talking about children being born without limbs. That's not the case here. You must be at least 18 years old, have a grievous and medical condition, make the request voluntarily and not the result of external pressure, coercion, for example, from a family member or whatever may be the case. Give informed consent. Be advised of other options such as palliative care. Grievous and irremediable medical condition was defined as serious and incurable illness, disease, or disability in advanced states of irreversible decline in capability that is causing enduring physical or psychological suffering that is intolerable and cannot be relieved under conditions that they consider to be acceptable. And that natural death had become reasonably foreseeable, taking into account all medical circumstances. Reasonably foreseeable being the key words as it turned out in later years. And the government of the day did its best to put in some safeguards. Requests must be made in writing, must be signed by one other person. 2 independent witnesses had to date and sign the request. The medical professional had to tell the patient, you can reverse your decision at any time, right up until the last second. There was a cooling off period of 10 days. And immediately before providing the procedure, the person was given the opportunity one more time to withdraw the request. Okay. If the person had difficulty communicating, they had to take all necessary measures to provide a reliable means by which the person may understand the information provided to them. Independent witnesses was put into the language of the law because you didn't want a scenario where witnesses stood to benefit, say financially, from a person's passing. An independent witness meant you couldn't be in the will. You couldn't be in line for an inheritance. You couldn't be the owner of a healthcare facility like a nursing home or a retirement home, a long-term care home, or a hospital. A witness couldn't be involved in the day-to-day personal care of the patient, like a spouse taking care of a partner or a child taking care of a parent, because you didn't want relatives opting for MAiD because of, say, burnout. For example, the government didn't want a scenario where relatives would pressure families into MAiD because of burnout or because there might be a house that they would inherit or their stock portfolio. That was the original law. That was the 2016 law. And then it was changed about 5 years later because of a case in Quebec called the Truchon case. So there were safeguards, the guardrails, if you will, that were put into effect that dealt in no way with the extreme circumstances that the caller was raising. Even though I appreciate the caller's deeply held religious convictions. I really do. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
From the state of MAiD in Canada to Kitchener, Dwayne is on the line. Hello, Dwayne.
Hi, Rob.
Yeah, hi, Dwayne. Yeah, good to hear from you, Dwayne.
Thanks for taking my call.
You're welcome.
I'd like to just make a few quick points on their topic of the day, which I think is very important that we as a society should take a good look at this. A couple concerns I do have, and I think earlier you were just mentioning that governments have been trying to set up guardrails to avoid any abuses of this procedure. And but I also realize too, and I think we as a humanity realize that guardrails can be changed, that it's not permanent. And my concern is, as time moves on, as our society becomes more and more, I personally feel less human life is becoming less and less of a importance. But that's another whole topic. That pressures from our healthcare system, for example. We are limited resources, and it could not necessarily be legislated, but it could be very subtle. That we have limited resources, and as the baby boomer generation, which I'm a part of, become more and more part of the larger healthcare sector, that it might not happen next year or 10 years, but I think it's a direction that I feel our society might regret, that we're going to be more and more liberal as far as qualifications for this procedure, and who knows where it's going to go. That's my concern.
Appreciate it. Thank you for your call, Dwayne. Let's go to first-time caller Adam in Calgary. Hello, Adam.
Hey, Rob, how are you?
Very good, Adam. Thank you. Your opinion, please.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. I just want to say real quick first, I've been listening for a while, and I really applaud your patience and your tact dealing with some difficult callers. So it's very impressive. Yeah, no, I think MAiD is very important for, people who are sick and who are in pain and are suffering. I've seen loved ones suffer with cancer, shortly after MAiD was legalized and they weren't able to get the procedure. But I do a lot of Angus Reid surveys, and I did one a couple of years ago about MAiD that I found a little disturbing, and I think we're starting to see sort of some of the questions they were asking coming true, because it started and it was very it made a lot of sense. Do you support MAiD? Yes, I do. Do you support MAiD for people who are, sick and dying, dying within the next 12 months, 24 months, stuff like that. But then it kind of turned and it was asking, do you support MAiD for individuals who are feeling like they don't belong in society? Do you support MAiD for individuals that are concerned that they can't afford the cost of living? And I was like, these don't feel like topics like that, I don't think anybody would want to see a loved one go because, they're suffering from thoughts of depression or something like that. Yeah, poverty too. It just seems ridiculous to offer someone, assistance in dying because they can't afford the necessities of life. You would think we would just work more as a society to find supports that are going to allow them to afford life. It even got into, I'm a new father, and it even got into children. It was asking if you support MAiD for youth, and it was asking if you support MAiD for youth without parental consent. And I feel like some of those questions just really
that was debated on Parliament Hill, sir. That was debated on Parliament Hill. Should terminally ill children be allowed to consent to MAiD on their own without their parents being involved?
Yeah. Okay.
So that's why they were probably asking about that.
And this survey didn't state terminally ill. That was the thing that, if I have a child that's suffering from leukemia or some sort of terrible illness, and they tell me like I just want to die, and we know that there's likely no chance, like I could see that maybe being like, okay, maybe I could go get behind that. But just the thought of like, a kid going in with depression. I think back to when I was a teenager and I thought I was depressed when a girlfriend broke up with me, and God forbid, someone's kid walks into a doctor's office and receives MAiD because they,
sure thing. Yeah.
For some reason that doesn't make any sense. So I just think I worry that it's become a lever for the government to reduce spending on overall on people who have health issues and are requiring more care, instead of doing what we need to do to beef up our healthcare system. And
it's a very valid concern. It is a very valid concern. I thank you for sharing it today. Adam, we do have to stop here. However, we'll take as many calls as we can in the final few minutes that remain. If you're on the line, please hang on the line. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
On the 10th anniversary of the legalization of MAiD, first-time caller in Calgary is Catherine. Hello, Catherine. Hi, Catherine. Hello, Catherine. No, I don't think we have Catherine. Yeah. She's just muted. Okay. We still haven't got over that, putting ourselves off mute. Let's try Joe in Kitchener then. Hello, Joe.
Hello, Rob.
Joe.
I heard earlier on you had a thumper on the show espousing her religious views about Scripture and what God says is golden and what isn't. Listen, this isn't 1955, okay? This is 2027. I'm a Reformed Catholic. I don't subscribe to that dogma, that Catholic dogma, hypocritical crap anymore. I'm in the age of information and enlightenment. And if you have a head of lettuce lying in a bed that has specific instructions on how they want to go out, don't you think we have to respect that?
That seems to be a very popular opinion today. I wouldn't describe somebody as a head of lettuce, Joe. I mean, let's use some respect here. But if somebody had the ability to plan in advance, should they reach a state of incapacity, I would say I could generally support that idea.
This dogma, it's like, that's so 1955. Like, created by man. That wasn't created by Jesus Christ. That's why I'm a Reformed Catholic, because I don't subscribe to that hypocritical crap anymore.
Okay. I don't want to go around in circles, Joe. Thank you. And your phone is kind of cutting in and out there. There are some thunderstorms rolling through the area, I believe. Let's go to Southern Alberta. Ben is in Southern Alberta. Hello, Ben.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Ben.
I just like to say to the last caller that God is still alive in 1950. No, God was alive in 1950. And he's alive and well in 2026. That's all I want to say. But this MAiD this sickens me to my stomach, I'll be quite honest with you. People get MAiD for pain-related reasons, like they're in pain, they got nothing left to live. It doesn't matter if you're religious or not. Once you've died, and you were in pain up till then, whatever, you received medical assistance in dying, you killed yourself, you're a self-murderer. And that is a sin that can no longer, once you're dead, you can no longer repent from that sin.
Well, I suppose that's if you subscribe to. I suppose that's if you subscribe to that way of thinking. But there are millions of Canadians who don't believe in that.
I can believe that, Rob, and it's very.
Well, you can believe that.
It's very sad, but it doesn't matter if you believe or not. In the end, everybody talks to God. Everybody. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you believe that God doesn't exist anymore. I'm just wanting to warn people. If you want to take MAiD, hey, I'm not here to stop you. But I'm just here to tell you, once you're in hell, you got a lot more pain, and there is no MAiD in hell. There's no MAiD in hell, and you will burn forever. That's
all right. Okay. And you've said it. You have said it. Okay. Appreciate that. Not everyone subscribes to that, as I would say. Whew. Back again tomorrow. Things heated up pretty fast there, didn't they, in the tail end of the program? Back again tomorrow. Brand new topic. Much cheerier, I promise. And until then, the latest breaking news. I'm Rob Snow, and this is News Radio.